Hello everyone. The title of today's episode is that there are worlds within you. So there are worlds within you. And it's very important to explore this concept, and Mr. Within will be jumping into it right from the human experience, because the human being looks at itself as an idea, and this idea is walking through life. And so it is perceiving itself as an objective body within this world, as a body with an individual consciousness, an idea, and a name, and all these put together will be its recognition and how it communicates with other human beings. But is that it? Is that the realm? Are we lost to the personalities that take us to their own realms? We need to really see that when we look at our world, we are placing it there. How you are keeping the self molded is how the projection is suggesting what is valuable to you. When you look at life, when you see what is beautiful, there's an aspect of something within you innately looking at itself. It's as if this externality is kept all through within you, internally. And as it is kept internally, through the projection, there are some moments where your consciousness realizes nothing is here because it's all there. You see, it's in a sense, a sense of distinction which is giving you an understanding of spatial and time-based orientation. But, simply said, when the character changes, so does the story, and there are moments, and there have been some characters in the human experience which have dissolved from the human idea. What that means is I can no longer speak about them, but we can stand in the mystery of their passage. Which was one of clarity, existential clarity, and the heart of all existence. And the heart of truth. Get rid of the heart of existence for it. When it is suggested that there are worlds within you, it really means that there is something very huge in your experience. And I would like to bring in, and I would like to just share something interesting that I found. Hafez is a very profound mystical poet, which I share his quotes from. Now, I bought this book, which is the translations. So this guy translated Hafez's poems, which were in a different language. And on the back of this Hafez book, there's a comment where Coleman Barks, who's the translator for Rumi, is giving as a recommendation, I guess. The quote is, Coleman Barks is saying, and I'm just going to say a bit of it, just the part that it's relevant to this talk, is that Coleman Barks says there are universes inside Hafez, a lineage of masters. As if whoever Coleman Barks was, he had saw the profundity in where such sacred hymns came from. And it came from some of the most directest aspects of human experience. That is why profound poetry is profound, because it gives you a transparency in reality which suggests that there is always the limitless within the limitation. So when Coleman Barks here is saying there are universes inside Hafez, a lineage of masters, don't think it's just Hafez. There are universes within you. And so begin to understand yourself in a manner where you are seeing that everything that is kept is being kept in a world of consideration. And just like you have free will, you also have that existential collective intelligence of free willingly moving beyond the plane. Once you know yourself as beyond the individuation of humanity, or a form of reference within a dualistic spectrum, you begin to see that you allow yourself to lift up. So the lift up is actually in you seeing that there is nothing here for you aside from absolute experience. And that regardless of our politeness, our sense of what is right and what is wrong, our sense of how we look and our sense of how we behave, our intelligence seems to be one where the bodies are being so aware of the mind that they're realizing the mind was the origination of the body. And as the mind begins, as we become existentially responsible in the sense that our imagination was never unnatural, but our lack of creativity was unnatural. We see that your natural state is one of efficiency, harmony, and creative bursts, so that you are collectively receiving the world that you know and you don't know. For a temporal being had the privilege of seeing the beauty of infinite passage. Of eternal passage. So let us consider it in such a manner, because multidimensionality is something that mankind cannot ignore. It will become relevant, and so Mr. Within is here to suggest some ideas on how we can approach it. Multidimensionality must not be something that you're really getting the frameworks externally at first. It's not something like, for example, Mr. Within here is talking about it, but it does not mean it's something that you should make it completely your reference. What you should recognize is that you are a moment of life, regardless of your age, regardless of your shape or what you have done, you're just a moment of being. You're a life form. Now, as a life form, we want this life intelligence to observe its form. We want the human being to observe its being aspect, or in a sense, as its being, observe its humanity. So what that means is begin seeing that there's no need to do anything, because this is on a subtler plane of thought. Man is sitting down in stillness, silence, and observing the nature of where the void meets his world. And so, again, when it is suggested there are worlds within you, these are worlds in which your gaze of intelligence and awareness sincerely finds. There are aspects when you look at the intelligence of this manifestation where there is no emotion, there is no life, but there is vastness in activity. What that means is, for the human experience, it might be not that real, but if you begin to see, let's say, comets passing you by, like right in front of your face, you will suddenly see that experience is so different in intensity, and it's meaningless. It can be chaotic, it can be ordered regardless. It is an activity natural beyond. So as man moves beyond the judgment system that made him too heavy of an idea to carry, he begins to see that we're not here to hold on to objects, and that includes who we think we are. That includes the arrogance, the pride, the foolishness in thinking that we are greater than another experience of life. If every human being forgot their names and forgot any word, and they just looked around, they would just see that they would calmly be alive. But only the nature of such things comes from the nature of other worlds. That the human being was never guilty for how this world is now. The way this world is based on the blueprint of the cosmos, in the sense that all these unique beings that were, in a sense, birthed and originated out of this planet came through the design and structure of another planet. It is another simultaneous plane. So what that means is that when you are at the center of the infinity sign, the twists don't matter. You begin to see you trust your life and you trust the flow of it. And the reason you're trusting it is because you are seeing that is the most efficient and valuable act to do as a self-explorer. As someone who's trying to recognize consciousness and trying to naturally recognize it, go in nature, be silent, be still, and observe, all right? You're not here trying to follow some guy's curriculum. You're here to learn from your life force, from your life intelligence, and if need be, relate and use other references that other human beings have done. What that means is if you were an island, what would your view be of the world compared to you being in a world where you were introduced to all this knowledge and conditioning and everything you've read, let's say. Think of the empty gaze and think of the gaze filled with ideas to a degree that he didn't even know what was real. When we break up the spectrum too much, intelligence dies. This is simply how the nature of interpretation and communication in regards to duality and its observance happens for the being. That if I begin cutting up this world, I need to then give myself the existential responsibility of giving each one of those beings life. And again, I need to after that, if I cut up each sense of, let us say, unit, each unit is again cut. Do you see? So it's as if measurement was a kind of breaking down of something that really doesn't need to be broken down. I mean, I could try to think, oh my God, what happened to my vein? But it's not in general view. Do you see? I say, oh gosh, what happened to my arm or something? Do you know? Many collisions, we are choosing its impact, and we need to recognize it and align ourselves with sincerity and with the novelty of our moment. And as we do, as we trust the simplicity of our life, from that simplicity comes this natural cultivation where there's no longer a story and the character is just seeing what it is. It's seeing its characteristics. It's trusting its shape and life, and through that trust is developing a devotion to move beyond any limitation because he is loving the limitation. Do you see? It's as if that man who loved every moment of life realized that all there was left to do was to love death. So what that means is that death is not wrong. It is simply an aspect of existential passage. And so man must become aware, because if you do not adjust your existential sensitivity, what that means is that there could be this brilliant artist drawing the most brilliant thing, and me and you suddenly randomly accidentally running around it. That's crazy, no? Imagine one artist, imagine that child, imagine that rapper who knew his ability was there but didn't know how to get himself out. Imagine all those beings who are maintaining ability and have developed skills but don't know how to communicate. What happens to them? Well, they become the gift of their allowance to move in the way they choose. But at the same time, you begin to see that some voices were never yours, for you were speaking for the most essential needs of the human being. Multidimensionality is a very beautiful phenomena, because as you recognize the individual is multidimensional, you also realize the world is multidimensional. As you realize the nature of your self-reflection is multidimensional, you begin to realize that an infinite spectrum all led to an observance that was empty. What that means is it's unspeakable. It's the edge of how much man can explore with communication. The rest is through direct experience. And so do not judge yourself that much, but realize language is a technology, and you must first be existentially aware. What that means is you shouldn't be in your fantasies too much or in some ideas too much, even though these talks do have a certain depth, but we don't need to be diving into the ocean too much. Do you know? Because then we'll be missing the beauty of the land. What that means is there's one way where you're looking at life where you are taking it literally to the next level. And there's one way of looking at life where you're seeing the level you're on. And so you're beginning to see that the framework of thought never needed to be there when there was a clear view. Be comfortable with your existential intelligence. The reason Mr. Within constantly emphasizes this sense of existential comfort, which is a need to develop, is because it advances your mind by making the individual idea, ego of you, who is constantly separating itself, trust its world to a degree where it becomes the intelligence of the collective. So you are dissolving into your omniscience, and what that means is that your idea is no longer using its creativity to make depression and judgment for itself, but its creativity is constantly acknowledging its every manifestation in its moment, at its most excited peak. And as it is, you begin to see the simplicity in transcendent acts, that when you become aware of the life that you are, the life that you are knows what to do. Because it is done. It is there. You didn't have to do anything to be. So perhaps when Shakespeare looked at a human skull and he wondered to be or not to be, perhaps that man was wondering if manifestation needed to be here at all. Did man need to have his eyes open? And you begin to see this question lingers in the minds of men, and it does not even linger in the minds of men alone. Because vision is here to show you what you are made of. For why else will you be looking in the way that you are? When you recognize the intensity of what is keeping the human intelligence here, your multidimensionality is your responsibility as a life form here, as a considered self-awareness here, to explore the peaks of your experience. No longer is success just some physical seat of survival, which you feel it's fitting. No. We are not looking for fitting uniforms. We want to get rid of all clothing in the sense of ripping it apart. Ripping apart all conceptualization, ideology that is making you separate the idea of your fellow man. Visualize yourself in an island, and in an instant come back to the city and tell me your mankind is not a blessing to itself. Mankind must realize its gift is in self-awareness, that when it knew what its origin was, it could never forget, and it had never mistaken. That regardless of what illusion one reality projected, man had the ability to move beyond that projection. Do you see that you have seen? And so you will get moments in your life where you will wonder what all of this means. And it will mean, my friend, that from now on, you are in the now. And ideology and considerations of time and space do not enter your reality, for you are the observance of it. And you begin to see what is manifesting is the natural phenomena of your moment. And so you study the natural phenomena of your moment of existence. And so this is where Mr. Within has been found, where your trust has moved beyond form to know of the inspiration you have come from and you shall go to. For there is an existential reunion. Do you think that man is just loving just his partner? Oh, for a man, the feminine is a great door of beauty. It is a door that opens worlds. But there is an existential love that is beyond your ideology, my friends. It is a love that is not based on concept. It is a love based on presence. And when I say love, this sense of love is one that allows. What that means is it was so simple that it stood there, just being what it had to be. Love is the eternal recognition that we allow everything else to change, for we are the change. Wake up tomorrow and ask yourself what kind of co-creation you want to do. And if you still have an idea in your mind, and you're aware of it, know that from this awareness, the excitement of every moment awaits. Trust your intuition. For that is why you have called it intuition, and you have that imagery. Utilize all manifestation and recognize that consciousness, as it tries to move beyond its individual frameworks to a collective understanding, it is going through a stream kind of understanding. So what that means is that, let me say it like this, that we have the drop mentality, which is the individual saying, I'm this personality, calling it an ego. Through certain life processes, practices, actions, meditations, contemplations, and whatnot, you begin to see this drop will begin to observe more personalities and in a sense turn into a bigger drop and then suddenly move into a stream and find itself within a river or stream. And you begin to see that it's as if man, from this individual sense of awareness, by being aware of his existential awareness, which was annoying, which is in a sense beyond space and time but still present, you begin to see it's like as man acknowledges his idea but suddenly sees that that idea is relevant to everything else that he's considering separate. As separation is looked at again, the conscious observer changes his view, and as the conscious observer changes his view, he begins to see as the conscious observer and you begin to see, like, as you begin aware and to continue, you begin to see that individuality becomes aware of what's defining its individual, suddenly realizes it has infinite potential. A sense of hope and inspiration comes into the being. The being then recognizes that it doesn't have to be one personality, so is found in a greater state of intelligence where many personalities can arise. As many personalities arise, these personalities are increasing the ability of the being to communicate, for they are becoming a sense of orientation with them. So what that means is it is a sign of an advanced mind to have external manifestations of personality. What you begin to see, this is where you see that the human mind, the consciousness in this vehicle, which is this physical body, in a sense, guys, I'm going to use this vehicle analogy, begins to kind of see that the vehicle is not run by only its intelligence. And so this is how the individual is transitioning through its own action, which is its own experience of life. As it is living, it is observing the nature of its living, the quality of its experience, and as it's observing its experience, it is basking in the profundity of the intelligence that is keeping it here. And that is love, which is the foundation of what brings the fruits of multidimensionality and the observance of such worlds that are within you. I hope that in your recognition that all knowledge was meaningful if it was useful to you. Because, trust me, I can read 1,000 stories, but if it is not guiding me with a sincerity for me to take my next step, I will see that it is elusive. And what that simply means is that people are not just liars. Human beings are not just liars. Sometimes environments, worlds, events and scenarios seem like they are not being honest with you. And so when your world is not being honest with you, that is where the mystic begins to recognize he has always known what he had to do. And so the mystic will in a sense recognize that he will confront directly the fear of life and death. And so the mystic sits down and silently and in a very still manner in the nature of all being comfortably gazes as reality. As he does, he recognizes where form is. The formless presence is the observance, which is here. And you begin to see that your ability was a capability that also was always here. And this knowing that different thought projections, different conceptions of space and time, based on certain stories, were all connected to the same link. In other words, they were all connected to the same moment, as if a dot with infinite lines going through it. You begin to see that there's always dimensions. So what that means is that if I draw a dot and I draw one line in it, and then I draw another line in it, that dot is receiving all those dimensions, even though we're not acknowledging it because the ink is dissolving it. But it's as if there are so many new lines of information going into the dot, and that one dot remains just a dot. It remains just its moment, empty and clear, but it is holding infinity and also living in one of these lines as well, which is where we find ourselves. And so multidimensionality, guys, becomes how your experience is moving from an individual idea sense of association into recognizing that direct experience was always being had. You thinking that you don't know what to do is a direct experience, but its observance required you taking all the imagery of your life. So what that means is there are certain revelations that come to you when you're like, gosh, where did I leave my keys? And you suddenly remember, oh, that's where I left my keys. And there are some revelations where you wonder why your life is in a certain way, and you close your eyes, and in one instant, as if a butterfly has just sat on your forehead, you begin to suddenly see every image in your life and every moment in your past, and how they were all relevant, and how your mind in the present moment has an ability to keep them in many structures. What that means is the past can stand beside the present, beside the future, and beside all these conceptions, subtler manifestations occurring in the awareness of man. Man must acknowledge himself not just as an ideal which is too certain about a world which he's not letting himself grow more than it's like I feel mankind right now is like putting a plant in a box and wondering why it's not receiving the sunlight, and the plant innately knows that it needs sunlight. Recognize that it is very important how your communication will adjust the harmony of your life by changing how you are receiving your form in your moment. So information is no longer something where you need to get that book or that book or that book had the truth or this book had the truth or this was right or this was wrong. It becomes that moment where you become aware of how you are receiving the world, and then your world changes. And so you see seeds planted from eons ago will begin to sprout. You will see that you have always been your greatest introduction. And as you have stepped out of form within all that is, the illusion was omniscient. So the intelligence was within everything. So an omniscient intelligence means that worry even had worlds within it. Every object of observance has a world within it, for the experiencer is transcendental in that manner. And these words may seem fixed at times. They may seem like the repetitive pattern on the infinity symbol. But my friends, you need to see that this mountain is a climb where each being is to do alone until they recognize what's at the peak. There are many ways to approach this life, but it is important, and what Mr. Within will suggest is that however way you're approaching it, do it sincerely and do it with the absolute honesty that is within your presence. Because as you become honest, compassionate, and sincere, and a bit more gentler with your world, in the sense that you begin to listen to it, learn from it, help it, and grow with it, you will begin to see that a man who gave everything to the world realized that the world gave everything back to him. By realizing that he was present within the cosmos. I've been interrupted very madly by phone calls throughout this talk, so it might be a bit chopped up, but I hope the message is still going to be communicated well. To continue, simply said, life is here, observe it, trust your intuition, trust life, because what your intuition is doing is planting seeds of realities which you can trust. As you follow the excitement of your life, it's not just going anywhere. It is going to a way where you're cultivating understanding, cultivating more of a certainty in the uncertainty of life. You're becoming wise. The sage realized that the greatest teaching was everything that was present within his moment. For that monk who sat under the waterfall might have wondered why he cut his hair. But there will come a moment where the intensity of such natural phenomena will enlighten him in an instant. You will see existential love will be the poetry of your unknown, into how every end was a new beginning. Much blessings and namaste.